Everybody is dealing with something. And that's really why I want to share these stories, because the more stories we tell, the more people can relate to them, and hopefully we can help, get through their own struggle.
Yeah, no, it's super simple to do a podcast. You basically just need a couple of microphones and sit down and talk for a little while.
Felt like we could have talked all day.
Yeah, it was good. A lot of good content.
I tend to talk a lot, sorry.
Well, that's what you want for a podcast.
We're constantly publishing new content. Be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell.
Okay, cool. All right, you guys. So welcome to Tattoos of My Soul podcast. Today I have not one special guest, but two. I have Chris DiRoma with us, joining us from Florida, and I also have my husband, my better half, Lindsey Duncan.
Yep. Joining from Ohio.
Joining right next to me, yes. So I'm super excited to have Chris on today. He is actually getting ready, or it's technically already a part of our family here at All-In, but we'll be traveling up to Ohio from Florida next week to do all company training. And so I'm super excited to have you on, just because you're part of the family now. And so it'll be awesome to get to know you a little bit better. You and I met for the first time, I think it was back in January, when Lindsey and I were down in Florida. And we had breakfast, and you were just kind of sharing some little bits and pieces from your life. And then I saw a post that you made on Facebook about a month or so ago that we'll get to in a little bit. But that made me think right away, like, man, Chris needs to be on the podcast, because you have a story to tell for sure. So welcome. We are excited to have you today.
Thank you very much. And what a shocker for your surprise guest in studio with you today.
Right. When I said that a few minutes ago, hey, Chris, I have a surprise guest. You're like, I think I might know who's popping on. Right.
I'm excited. I'm excited to be part of your new All-In Nutritionals family, and excited to come to Ohio.
Yeah. Are you really excited to come to Ohio?
From Florida.
From Florida.
if the weather cooperates.
Yes. Like I said before we started, it was 72 yesterday, so hopefully you get a little bit of that next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but so Lindsey and I were just sitting in my office before we started the podcast, and this is kind of a spur of the moment thing, but I just wanted the two of you to talk a little bit about kind of your history, because you guys have known each other forever.
She asked me to join the podcast like 9 minutes ago.
Yeah, I was like, hey.
You want to be on this podcast?
You want to come over? And this is actually your first time on the Tattoos podcast, so this is a big deal, yes. Yeah. But you guys just share a little bit about how you came to know each other, your history, and how you reconnected.
How long have we known each other for, Chris? Like 29 years or something, 30 years maybe?
I've reminded you of this story. I'm not sure if you remembered it or not, but I actually met you. I first got my health food industry start in Colorado when you were owned and run Nature's Secret. And I started with a small sports nutrition company in Castle Rock, and I really liked it and wasn't making any money. And I saw an ad for Nature's Secret was hiring. So I drove to Boulder and met with Dr. Lindsey and had this interview, and literally he blew me out of the water. and I walked out of there with my tail between my legs, and I said, I think I need to get some more experience. Fast forward, when I moved to Florida years later, started my own brokerage company, had a lady working for me that knew one of Lindsey's former employees, and Lindsey's booth was right behind ours. I had worked for Nordic Naturals for 18 years, and it was right behind us, and Nordic always had the busiest booth at every trade show I've ever been to, except for that one. When Lindsey launched Genesis Today, which was behind us, it was like a crowd of people around the booth the entire show. And the lady who was working for me, she says, "Do you know him?" I'm like, "Yeah, but I don't think he'll remember me." She goes, "We need to get that line." So I went over and I told him the story, and he says, "So you're saying you have some experience now?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, I'll meet you after the show." And that's how we started working together again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So if that was Boulder, Colorado, that would have been 1996 or 1997.
Yeah, mid-90s. I know it was mid-90s because I moved out there like 93 or 94.
Yeah. So that's 26, 27, about 28 years we've known each other. Yeah, and worked together. And as you know, Chris was probably was our top sales rep in the entire United States and Canada.
Yeah.
With the Florida region, with Genesis Today, and has always just been amazing. I mean, just the relationships that you have, that you fostered over the years, have been unmatched.
I've been very lucky, very blessed, I should say, that I've been able to find people like Dr. Lindsey to work with, because, you know, building relationships is one thing, but you have to have a great product to take them. Yeah. And then once you put that great product on your shelf, you have to have the follow through. You have to have the education, which I learned more from him than anybody in my entire career. And then sampling and all those kind of good things. And so, you know, that's kind of how I got my start. But a lot of it was because of him. I always remembered, you know, you don't have experience. I'm like, I'm going to get it. And then there he was.
Boy, you have experience now.
Determination.
When I first decided to give birth and start All-In Nutritionals, you were one of definitely the top 3 people that I thought of to join the family. You and my brother, obviously, 2 of the top people.
Well, and I think too, anything, and that's, we always say, well, these are businesses, but to us, they don't really feel like businesses because there's so much passion behind what we're doing. And I think that's what I'm hearing from you is, you know, you are passionate, you believe in what you are talking to people about. And I remember when we were together in January, you were talking about how over time, you've made so many changes to your own personal health because of the things that you've learned along the way, you know, selling supplements. And I think that's so huge for anything that you're doing in life, is that you have that deep passion, because if you don't, you know, you fizzle out sooner or later.
Yeah, I think what he went through was unbelievable.
Yes,
and
which
it's just right
we're going to learn
line.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your story is just, it's just amazing that you're still here, you know?
My surgeon told me if I wouldn't have been taking care of myself, because it was more of a genetic thing, which we'll get into, but that I wouldn't even have made it through the surgery.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to jump off because I have a conference call. I'm going to let you guys share that. But Chris,
thank you for your cameo appearance.
Yeah, and your story is just unbelievable, and I love to see what you're doing now is just amazing, and what you're doing with your health, and what you're doing with your story, and what you're doing with your career. You know, hats off to you. You're doing amazing work.
Yeah,
and I look forward to working with you.
We're excited to have you a part of the team.
I look forward to it too. Oh, I can't wait.
Am I allowed to kiss you on goodbye?
Sure. There's no rules on the podcast. Okay.
Perfect.
That's funny. All right. So here, Braden, do I need to readjust a little bit, or now that we're off center, I guess? Okay, so now it's just you and I. We'll do the normal bit for the podcast. But I'm glad that we had Lindsey on, because I was going to ask you just about your history, but I thought it'd be better for just the two of you to talk about it, so it's more authentic that way.
I loved it.
Yeah. So usually what I start with, so we'll kind of back up a little bit, is I am very much a words person. Words are huge to me. And I think a lot of people are driven by words. And so I always ask our guests, do you have a certain quote, a certain scripture or verse or motivational phrase that has played a big part in your life that you'd like to share with everybody?
I do. And I wouldn't say I'm not like the church-goer, but I definitely have a belief in God and believe He's the only reason I'm still here. And my brother, who had worked for me for 10 years, is still probably going to help me out a little bit, Tony, is very Christian, very spiritual, and has given me many quotes over the years and stuff like that. But I always tend to go back more towards, you know, athletes and back when athletes were athletes, not entertainers. But I have a comment or a quote that I think that I keep on my office wall that I relate to my faith, because it's how I am with my faith. And it says that success isn't always about our greatness. It's about consistency. Consistent hard work gains success, and greatness will come. So I try to keep my faith consistent.
Yes.
And, I keep it kind of more to myself. So this is unusual for me to even talk about it.
Yeah.
But we talked a little bit about my accident, and there's no doubt in my mind, without God, I wouldn't even be here.
Yes, I would agree. Why don't you, let's just jump right into it. Why don't you tell everybody what you went through? Because I 100% agree with what you just said.
Yeah, I grew up in a household that wasn't faith-based. I mean, they believed in God. We didn't do church or anything. And my mom got divorced at a very young age, so I didn't really know my dad. I was 3 when she left Ohio, of all places. And so, she remarried, and he adopted all 3 of her kids, and then we had my other brother, Tony. And so I never knew my family's medical history. So I had always stayed in good shape, work out, we eat right, try to do everything. I think nutrition and health and life are all about balance. If you do everything in balance with your working out and how you eat, or if you want a cocktail, or if you want a glass of wine, okay, but I try not to overdo anything.
Yeah, moderation.
And, moderation. And so this came almost as a surprise to me. I was working, which I don't always do in moderation. I usually tend to overdo that, but I'm trying to work on that too. I was in South Florida working, and I had a great workout that morning. This was 6 years ago. February 25th was my 6-year anniversary. And after my workout, I went back to my hotel and I changed, met with a couple of my demo people in South Florida, saw, I think, 4 customers. I have another lady I met that day who works for another company. We kind of traded products. Some of her stuff I like, some of my stuff I like. And I was heading back to my hotel. It was probably about 4:30. And one of my customers, who used to be a great customer, and then he had some hard times in his business, he texted me, he says, "Man, meet me for a happy hour drink." And I'm like, "No, I'm going back to my hotel. I'm going to go out with one of my buyers for dinner." And he texts me again. He goes, "Come on, man, I haven't seen you in months." So I said, "All right, text me the address." And literally the last thing I remember is pulling into the parking lot. Yeah. And I had just gotten a new vehicle, so he didn't know what my vehicle looked like. So I walked in, and I don't remember any of this. They told me after the fact, and they said I ordered a glass of wine, but then I got up and I left. And I didn't take a drink. I didn't pay for it. And when I went outside the door, I fell.
And you don't remember walking into the restaurant at all? Like you just said,
no,
this is what they told you that happened.
The surgeon told me after the fact it probably started happening on my way there. Wow. So then I got up and I went to get in my truck, I guess, and that's where I fell. And here's the part that God really came into play, because if I wouldn't have stopped at this restaurant, I went another 1.5 miles. I'd have been on the turnpike, and then probably about another 20 minutes to my hotel. Yeah. What happened was they called 911, and the fire rescue team in Pompano Beach was 2 miles away. So a bunch of young kids, I go and visit them every February 25th to take them a little token of my appreciation. And luckily for me, they were there very quickly. They didn't know what was wrong. They thought maybe I'd had a stroke. My blood pressure was only 60/30. And they got me to Holy Cross Hospital, which once again, God was watching out for me. Dr. Justice was the surgeon on call. He had just moved back from Atlanta, Georgia, teaching other surgeons how to do the procedure he performed on me, which what happened is my aorta dissected, it burst, and I had an aortic aneurysm. Wow. Now, I've Googled some survival rates, and what the doctor told me, less than 1% of the people survive an aortic aneurysm on an emergency basis. Yeah. So luckily,
I don't know that I've ever heard of anybody surviving that except you. Yeah.
Well, and as much as I know about nutrition and health, I knew we had an aorta. I knew aneurysms, but I never heard of people having an aortic aneurysm, just because I never researched it. Now, I found out later that genetically, I was predisposed to have that. My aunt, and I was 54 years old when that happened, my aunt had one at 54 and passed. My real father had kind of a weak heart. My heart's fine. It was just my aorta. But my real father's side of the family has genetically high blood pressure. Yeah. So, and I knew my blood pressure was elevated, but I'm like, you know what? I work out, I eat correct, no big deal, right? Well, it is a big deal. And that's why they call it the silent killer, right?
Yeah.
So
So all of that happened. Were you in the hospital for a period of time,
yeah.
or?
Oh yeah, I was
assuming?
I was in the IC unit for Holy Cross Hospital from 2.5 weeks, and that's about 4 hours from here in St. Petersburg, where my wife and I live. And so after 2.5 weeks, then I had another 10 days of rehab. And my daughter is an occupational therapist for Health South. And so my wife wanted me to do my rehab near our home rather than in Fort Lauderdale area. So there were no beds open at any Health South in Florida, or in the St. Pete, Tampa area. My daughter called the president of Health South, got 10 minutes away from our house.
Wow.
So that they brought me by ambulance, which I think is probably the worst 4 hours of my life that I remember. Probably the aneurysm was the worst, but I don't remember it. The ride from Fort Lauderdale in the back of the ambulance, looking out backwards, laying down, it seemed like it took 4 days, not 4 hours,
I can't imagine. Yeah.
So then I was there 10 days. I had a lot of issues with my lungs from the surgery. And so walking was an issue. I even left Health South with the oxygen, with a long enough, I had at that time a 3,600 square foot townhouse that was huge. So they gave me a cord long enough to be able to go to the restroom from my bedroom, from the living room area. And I literally, and my wife, she's a hustler, which I'm excited for you to meet her someday. And we work out all the time. She literally forced me to walk when they said it was okay for me to walk. I mean, some days it was 10 steps just down the hallway and back, but eventually, I started regaining my strength.
Yeah.
But I was super motivated though. My daughter was getting married at the end of April. And it's the first one of my children to get married, and I had to be there. This is only 2 months after my surgery. I was divorced from her mom and I'm remarried, but I hadn't seen her mom in such a long time, and the vainness came out of me, and I'm like, I have to look the best I've ever looked. And my wife always says, you look great, don't worry about it. Well, as it turns out, that vainness isn't good, because I literally looked the worst I've ever looked in my life. I'm around 215, 220 pounds. I was 165 pounds, and it looked like a skeleton.
Yeah.
But I was there.
Well, and that's all that matters. But I love how you're talking about like how all the different details that God worked out, because if I would have not stopped, then I would have been on the turnpike, and then all these things. I love to think about that kind of stuff, because just like for our own personal situation, I mean, what Lindsey and I went through, and I have recounted that day like so many times and thought about all the different things that I had no idea, like God was literally guiding us, as we went into this situation, and all through it, obviously. And I just think that goes to show, like, there's such like protection, and He's always watching out for us, and I think that is awesome too. When you go through a traumatic experience like you did, or like we did, you kind of look back and you start connecting the dots, and it becomes very awesome to realize how much you were protected through all these little details that, led you to surviving and still being here.
I mean, I like my friend, but I really didn't want to meet him. I had a good day. And then plus that, I was going to go back to my hotel, get up the next morning, come home, and then I was going to fly to Atlanta because my daughter was there for our conference. And I was going to see my daughter, and I was so excited about it. I'm like, no, I don't want to stop and meet this guy. I mean, and then he ends up pulling up, and there's an ambulance and a fire truck there, and it didn't recognize my truck. So he goes, I guess he didn't show up.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So it was, I learned so much from it. And I always, like Lindsey and I were talking, I've learned so much from people like him over the years, and a lot of my customers. I truly look like I work for my customers. Yep, I have the manufacturer's product. Yes, I'm working to make myself money. But if they're not happy and I don't give them the right things for their customers, then neither is the manufacturer, neither am I.
Right.
And I've learned so much from my customers also. And I have one of my great customers that Dr. Lindsey knows him, that taught me about this product that I should take that's so natural that I never thought of, that was good for your blood pressure. And it's helped me tremendously. Because I don't like pharmaceuticals, and I do take a low dose blood pressure medication because my surgeon said, take it or you could die. And I'm like, okay, I'll take it. But, I try to take as little as possible and try to do things the natural way.
Yeah, right.
So,
Which I think is smart because, there is a place at certain points for medicine. We all sometimes have to lean on that, even if we're really trying to do things the most natural way we can. But it sounds to me like you have made so many adjustments and that you've like really, okay, I have to take a little bit of medicine here, but I'm going to do my part, because a lot of the times we go through life and we're just kind of like, well, if I'm taking medicine, then I can eat what I want, drink what I want. Like, I don't really have to worry about it. And it sounds like from this situation, you absolutely, and I think you probably were thinking this way beforehand because it sounds like you were healthy beforehand, but you're just genetically predisposed, So, but it sounds like you've even upped the ante even more just to take care of yourself and to do everything that you possibly can to just keep yourself healthy, which I think is awesome. And you can share that knowledge with people as you're doing your job.
Well, I don't know if it sounds cheesy or not, but I kind of had this epiphany after. So I'm laying there and trying to do what I can to recover. And I remember the rehab people saying, listen, just because you're an ex-athlete, it's not like you tore your ACL. This is your aorta. You got to relax a little bit. You got to relax a little bit. But it was hard for me to do that. So I had a lot of time to think. I probably didn't go back to work full time for probably 4 or 5 months, I think. And I'm like, okay, it's like God gave me this second chance. There's a reason I stopped there because I didn't really want to stop there. Okay, so my whole life, it doesn't revolve around on how much I can sell for these particular manufacturers and how much money I can make. It's really about helping people, which literally is the reason I got into the nutrition industry, is because as an ex-athlete, before it was popular to take supplements, my dad and I actually had this buddy I went to high school with that were into protein powders and stuff like that before it was popular to take them, right? I'm talking the mid to late 70s. I mean, it just wasn't like normal,
Yes.
And so I was always interested in that. But, I really got into it, unlike a lot of people in our industry now, to help people. And I think somewhere along the way, I kind of lost track of my focus. And it was all about, okay, how much can I sell? Okay, Nordic Naturals, there wasn't a bottle on the shelf in Florida. I'm doing $4.5 million a year. I mean, just in Florida of omega-3 fatty acids, right?
Yeah.
So, and then of course you're making money, and my brother's working for me full time. My sister's working for me. Everybody's has nice things, and I truly felt like I got knocked upside the head and said, "Hey, that's a benefit of helping people."
Yes.
So, and one of the things Lindsey always talked about is education, as did all the brands that I work with now, because that's so important. Because you're really there to help the retailer, so they can in turn talk to the consumer and help everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody can get on and Google something nowadays, but I've always looked at there's a lot of misinformation.
Sure.
So
sure. And I like what you're saying too, because I had this same similar experience. You have this, I think if for anybody that goes through a difficult time, it's hard when you're in the thick of it, because it's like, you're going through a crisis, whether it's a physical crisis, emotional, spiritual, whatever it is. But if you have the ability to step back and like you did, and like I know I did, and say, okay, like I hate this situation that I'm in, but what am I supposed to learn from this? What am I supposed to adjust in my life going forward? What have I lost sight of? And I really think that a lot of the times God allows us to go through these difficult times so we can reevaluate, we can readjust. And hopefully if we're paying attention, then we can learn the lessons that we're supposed to learn, and going forward do things differently. I know we certainly before we went through our situation, we were living life pretty much just, Lindsey was retired very early. We were just we had sworn off business. We had said we're never going back to business because he had just some bad experience with previous companies and stuff, and it was just like, we're not doing all that anymore. We've got plenty of money to live on for the rest of our life, and we're good. And I think that was fine for a while, but I think God was also kind of like, you guys are wasting a lot of potential that I've given you. Like, I put you on this planet not to just sit back and enjoy life, but I put you on this planet to do exactly what you're saying, which is help people. if our lives needed shaken up a little bit in order for us to realize that, then I'm okay with that. I trust in that. And so I share that because I know there's probably a lot of people that will listen to the podcast and they're going through something in their own life where it's difficult, it's challenging. And I say to them, and I'm sure you would echo this sentiment, is just maybe step back and say, what am I supposed to learn? What am I supposed to adjust? Because, it sounds like you totally did, and I know that we did.
Yeah, my brother Tony also has like I told you, he gave me all these little quotes and stuff like that. His favorite one he gave me, and this one didn't come near my surgery, but it came when COVID hit, because he worked for me full time. And then, with retail taking such a big hit, I couldn't afford to pay him. And he lives in Pennsylvania, and he would fly to Florida every other week, and we have a great relationship, and our business was doing really, really well. But he wasn't even upset about it. He goes, listen, the setback is the setup.
I love that. That's cool.
Your setback is setting you up for something better.
Yes.
Or to learn. The setback, okay.
Yes.
Like I said, I was refocused after my surgery, so then, 3.5, 4 years later, okay, here comes COVID in 2020, and the whole world changed again. But and I know a lot of people got funky about that, but I always knew it was a virus, and yes, I took it seriously, but I also, your body is capable of healing from a virus. And I never believed that drugs were good for viruses, just like the flu and things like that. So I'm like, take care of yourself. And in my faith, I'm like, okay, if I get it and it's my time, it's my time.
Yeah.
The weird thing about my aneurysm is I don't ever think or worry about death anymore. Right. I probably should drive in the highways around here, but I don't.
Right. Well, and I think too, you were talking about being consistent with your faith in the beginning of the podcast and talking about how that quote related to consistency. And I think when we are going through our daily lives and we're tapping into that faith, and, you said, I'm not a huge churchgoer. I would say, even though I love to go to church and I feel spiritually fed there and everything, but I have found a church that fits my needs, and that is not easy to do. That is a struggle. We've gone through several churches where it's not been the case. But you don't have to go to church to have a relationship with God, and that's really what it's all about. If you find a great church and it nurtures your spirit to go, then absolutely go by all means. But you don't have to be in church to have a relationship with God. And, just being consistent in having an awareness to Him and His presence in your life each day, is, in my opinion, the most important thing.
Yeah, and traveling like I do, I only travel every other week, but I'm out 2, 3, sometimes 4 nights, and my wife likes it when I'm gone. She has her own time, but it's really, even my traveling around time, I'm on the phone a lot, but my nights at the hotel, first thing in the morning, at the end of the day, when I just have me just to think and reflect on life and the day and, things like that. That's when I truly feel I'm most connected.
Yes. Those quiet moments within, just kind of being able to disengage from the outer world. Yeah. Just connecting with God, connecting with yourself, collecting your thoughts. It's so important. Yeah.
And I find as I get older, it's even more so. I don't know why that's with me, but as I age, I don't want to say old because I don't feel old yet, but as I age, I enjoy that time. And I always tell my wife, I said, you should enjoy it too. She goes, why do? But when she enjoys her time, she's out running around with all of her girlfriends doing this, doing that. I like to be by myself or with the dog. When I'm at home, when she's not there home with the dogs, it's nice. You don't have the TV on, just sit there and relax. So
I agree. I sat on the front porch last night because, I told you it was 72 degrees here yesterday. Nice. So last night the kids were out playing in the yard, and it's so funny because they were out playing, they were occupied, and I was like, well, I really should go do A, B, and C. I should go check my email, should go fold laundry, I should go do all these things. And I thought, you know what? I am not going to do that. I'm going to go sit on the front porch. I'm going to disengage from everything for a bit and just sit in total silence. I'm not going to get on my phone. And I sat there for like, it wasn't a long time, like 10 minutes, but it was so like nurturing to my spirit. Like it was so good. And I just sat there and looked out over the yard. It looked really beautiful. The sun was getting ready to go down. And I think, you know, we live in such a high speed, everything's just super, super fast. You know, we're always on the go. We've always got pressure to just, you know, get as many things as we possibly can done in a day. And I think what I'm hearing from you, and I would definitely echo it, is just taking time to slow down for a few minutes and be quiet within yourself and be thankful and express gratitude and just, you know, talk to God, or think whatever you need to think at that moment is so very important, because life passes us by way too fast. You know, we've got to take that time to be quiet.
I talk about my brother a lot, but he says in the big picture of our world, we're here for such a short period of time.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You know, don't worry about, I mean, I don't think my brother worries about anything. and he has got a great, beautiful wife. They've been married since college, got 2 beautiful daughters. And he lives in a little town in middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, and it just loves it. You know, and it's so peaceful and relaxing there all the time. Now he's involved. I'd say probably the favorite church I have been to is the one him and his family go to. And I love his pastor. And over the years, you know, when I've had some tougher times, you know, I've talked to his pastor and the associate pastor on the phone. I feel comfortable with them.
That's awesome.
You know, and my brother's in charge of this men's group with his church. So I mean, it's like, you know, you're not being judged, and you can just open your feelings and talk about whatever you want to talk about. So
yes, which is exactly how church should be, in my opinion.
Yeah. If I could find a place like that here in my area, I would love that. I'd like to get involved with my wife, but that's not her. I mean, she believes in God, don't get me wrong, but that's not I don't think on her top interest list.
Right. Well, you know, and I just, again, the whole topic of finding the right church and finding a path, it's hard, you know, but, you know, like we just said a few minutes ago, you don't have to be inside of a church to have a relationship with God, you know, and I think a lot of the times people will think that, and it'll put a limitation on, you know, them connecting, and you don't have to be. You can connect right in your home, in your bedroom, in your office, whatever, you know, in your car. Doesn't matter. That's the awesome thing. That's what I always tell my kids. Like, literally, God, you cannot go anywhere where God is not there. Like, that is the awesome thing about Him, is we can connect anytime, any place with Him. So
I thank him all the time when I'm driving, because there's people cutting you off every day.
Oh my
thank God
gosh!
I didn't hit that person, or thank God I wasn't there. Thank God they're okay over there. You know?
100%. Yeah. I was going to ask you a few minutes ago, what would you tell somebody who's listening, who's maybe going through their own personal difficult time? Maybe they're going through a health challenge. Maybe they're struggling mentally, emotionally, whatever it might be, career-wise, relationship-wise. What's your piece of advice for somebody who's, you know, struggling right now?
I probably say my best advice I give him as an ex-athlete, where, you know, I never felt like I had to ask anybody for any help. I would just work out harder or do better. Don't be afraid to ask for help. You know, my brother I talk about a lot so far today is my younger brother. I was his hero growing up because I was this great athlete, but he's kind of my hero now because he's taught me so much spiritually. And don't be afraid to ask somebody, whether it's a family member or somebody in the parish, or, you know, a professional. I mean, mental health. I've lost 2 very close friends to suicide in the last 11 years, and it's hard. And you know, I always talk to them about their health and what they could do for their, you know, your brain's made up of mainly fat, so omega-3s are important, all this kind of stuff like that. But get some counseling. And I mentioned before, the setback is the setup. Just be patient, try to balance things out. And there's also a friend of mine, his name is Marco Borges. He's a trainer to superstars like Jay-Z and Beyonce. But he has a company called 22 Day Nutrition. And his belief, and it's in the Bible, I haven't found the verse yet, but he's told me this, and I believe him. It takes 22 days to make or break a habit. On that 22nd day, it's a habit, whether it's good or bad. So if you want something in your life and you want to change it, it can be that simple, or that.
Yes.
I don't want to say simple is the wrong word, but you can.
It's attainable.
It's attainable, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yes. I think that's great advice. I definitely know, going through my experience, if I would not have had certain people, my pastor played a huge role in my life. I did have a really good therapist that helped me for a time. There is no way I could have handled the emotional stuff that I was carrying around on my own. And I think a lot of people, you go through life and you don't want to reveal what you're dealing with. You don't want to admit that you're really struggling. It's very hard to say, I need help. I'm struggling. I don't have it all together, because, there's this pressure, especially now with social media, for all of us to look perfect and for all of us to look like we have the perfect life, but the reality of it is we are all going through something. And that's one of the very reasons that I started these podcasts, is because I realized, okay, I've gone through my stuff, my experience that was traumatic. Lindsey did, this is what we've learned. But the more stories that I can help people share, your story and all the other people that we've talked to, hopefully the more people relate to things, because it's they hear you talking about something, or I get that. I'm not going through the exact same thing, but I understand what he's saying. And, hopefully people pick up little tidbits that make them feel or make them realize they're not alone, because we are all dealing with some kind of pain, some kind of struggle. And just asking for help is usually really sometimes the hardest step, but it's that first step towards getting to the other side.
Well, another example of how good God can be, and is when I heard about your and Lindsey's situation. I have a really good friend of mine who I reached out to. She's very religious. She actually worked for Dr. Lindsey back in Genesis Today, and we both were on the phone. We're both praying and crying for both of you. And I remember one of the things I said to her, I was like, I feel bad I ever lost contact with Lindsey, because at that time I was going through struggles with some of the companies I was working with. Okay, I know how to build a company. Give me the tools I need. Give me the great products, and then I can do the rest. But instead, I was getting a lot of, no, do it this way. No, we're going to introduce this. I'm like, well, it's not going to sell. It's too expensive. I give them my advice that they took as negative. And I said, and I told Debbie that day, I said, God, I wish I could work with Dr. Lindsey again.
Yeah.
And then
there we go. Yes.
Through all the heartache and everything you guys went through, now I get reconnected with him. So, God is good. And totally. I know we're going to do great things with All-In Nutritionals, and I know we're going to help a lot of people because I don't know if this is the correct word to say or not, but I believe Dr. Lindsey's a healer. And I've seen him, and I've talked to him, and I've seen some of his examples of how he's helped people. Yeah. And I've learned from that. I don't think I'm ever going to be that knowledgeable or that good, but if I can take a piece of it, if I can help him bring in other people around the country that can take pieces of his knowledge and help more and more people, I think the whole world's going to be a better place. Yeah.
Well, and I think too, like what you just said, wishing to work with Lindsey again, and then lo and behold, here we call you, he calls you. But the truth of the matter is, if we would not have gone through that difficult situation, I don't think that we probably would have ever come back to business, because it wasn't like we said, oh, we should go start a business to make money with All-In and Tattoos and Revive. It was like we both felt so led, so guided to do that. We realized, as we had spent some time apart, as we were kind of going through this, healing journey, we both realized, hey, we got to take some time. We got to do our own thing. And it was really interesting. I don't even think that we told you this when we met, but we spent about 45, 50 days apart. And the whole time I was thinking, hey, I think we're supposed to do something. We're supposed to go back to work. We're supposed to help people. He was thinking the exact same thing, and we didn't share that with each other until we came back. We actually met up in Florida to just kind of like reconnect, and I said, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I think that we're supposed to do something. I think we're supposed to go back to work. I think you're supposed to go back to the nutrition field and do what you love and what you're so good at. I said, you're still young. I said, I know you still have so much to give to people, so much wisdom, and I know that you love it. You just don't like the business part of it.
Right.
And I said, and I think I'm supposed to help people emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And he was like, well, that's really interesting because I've been thinking the exact same thing the whole time we've been gone. So I share that because it's like, I think this time around, it's so much different for him. He does have such a true passion for helping people. I mean, I see him, we're laying in bed like at 11 o'clock at night and he's answering, health questions on Facebook or Messenger or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
And, he does that just because he wants to help people. And so I think that is what's amazing about the work that we're doing is what I said in the very beginning. There's passion at the very root of it. And what I'm noticing, and this is another God thing, is everybody that's kind of joining, our team or joining like our mission or whatever you want to call it, has that same passion, whether it's for the supplements or for its, like tattoos or whatever it might be. Everybody's like, I just want to help people, and I think that's so awesome.
Oh, yeah, and I actually, go ahead. I think the natural products industry needs kind of a reboot too, because there used to be people like Lindsey in the field that truly came out with products that were designed to help people. Now I think there's more companies that are designing their business model to sell product. Yeah. And one of my categories I despise in our industry now are all these gummies. Right, because the gummies, I'll give you an example. I had a company tell me, well, you should sell more of our vitamin C gummies. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. There's 250 milligrams of ascorbic sugar, acid, vitamin C, and 4 grams of sugar. So if you took 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C, you're getting 16 grams of sugar. And I said, being an ex-athlete, 16 beats 1 every time. And the sugar and the vitamin C are competing for the same cells, and the vitamin C is not going to win. So how are you really helping anybody? And this was during COVID. Well, everybody wanted vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc, and elderberry, and all these things for immune system, which none of this stuff is new. It's just somewhere in some social media or some doctor said you should take all this. Like, okay, they're not talking about sugar-filled gummies of vitamin C and vitamin D. They're talking about the actual vitamin that's going to give you a benefit, Right. So, but and that's the kind. And I haven't been privy to all of it, but I believe those are the kind of products that he's formulating and working on right now.
No, he's got some good stuff up his sleeve. So we're excited. Well, I appreciate you so much. I appreciate just getting to talk to you. I think you have an amazing story. I think, God was clearly involved, and I'm so glad that you're going to be part of our team. Looking forward to seeing you next week and everything.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah, so just thanks for coming on the Tattoos podcast, and I will see you soon.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
All right, bye.
Bye.